And today we are luckily joined by who, in my opinion, is one of the best commentators in combat sports there has been, the man John Gooden. John, thank you so much for joining us today, man. I know it's morning time, so how's your morning been so far?
Yeah, good start so far. You know how it is, early 2023. So we've all read what we should be doing.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't eaten yet. I've had my coffee. I'm buzzing. So, and
Awesome.
the sun's out in London, which is rare for this time of year. So it's a good day.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I heard you guys were getting done with some pretty heavy snow around Christmas.
Yeah, we had a little snow, and it's been like torrential rain for the last few days, like horrendous. So it's nice to actually just have something a little bit bright coming through the window today.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, look, first of all, John, obviously, it's the second week of 2023, and I wanted to start with saying Happy New Year to you and your family. And I just want to know how your New Year's and Christmas break was, and what did you get up to?
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was good. It was better than expected. You know how it is. Families are always complicated, right? And I feel like every year I get older, that complication just gets even more intense. So actually, we made the best of it. I have a 4-year-old daughter, so she's right in that age group where Christmas is pretty magical, and she's really understanding it a lot better and getting excited. Not the whole getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning just yet. So she had a good time. You know, we managed to get around and see, or we were entertaining a little bit. So we got to see some friends, family, which is something that I want to do a little bit more of in 2023. Last few years for all of us, you know, it's been really tricky with the pandemic, and then the hangover of that for me to just try and get back working all the time. That's the balance that I lack. So it was good to reconnect with some people and, just have a few laughs and kind of down tools for a little bit.
Nice.
But eager to get back to business.
I can imagine.
Yeah, for sure. So, John, look, first question I had for you is, we're obviously seeing the sort of first major wave of British MMA fighters, you know, begin to stand out with regards to popularity and making a significant impact on the sport. However, you know, one definitely cannot forget about a true legend of MMA in the Count, Michael Bisping, as he really was sort of the first major MMA star out of the UK. Can you just speak to his impact on the sport now that he is retired, and whether or not you think his infamous title win over Luke Rockhold sort of sparked this, you know, renewed fire and belief in his fellow British MMA fighters that they can achieve the highest of highs in the sport?
Yes, it's a really interesting one. And I guess when you're in it as much as I am, I sometimes don't see the overall impact, or I don't take enough time to sort of step back and really have a look at how all of this is played out. And also, you need a passage of time, as you were sort of alluding to. And I think you made a very important point. I think the impact, from my perspective, and I might be wrong on this, it has been more on the MMA community and the fighters, rather than the acceptance of mixed martial arts by the wider mainstream media and general population. I still don't think we're there. You know, I think it's a lot to ask of individuals, but you know, we have something over here called the BBC Sports Personality of the Year, and our athletes, I don't think we're really quite in the mix alongside your Lewis Hamiltons of the world and other like huge sports stars. Of course, you know, I would love to see that. It was great to see Leon Edwards be in the audience actually quite recently. Bisping was in the conversation as well. So I just wanted to kind of say that. But yeah, going around to other gyms, looking at the biographical material that we get and some of the questions that we ask the fighters, like who was it that inspired you? Bisping is on the tip of the tongue for a lot of these UK fighters. He did do it. This is no knock, because it was just the way things were, but he did kind of get his training done mostly in the thick of his career stateside. And that's the difference between him and Leon Edwards. Leon's obviously pushed this, the narrative that we can get it done over here. I spent one camp at AKA, which didn't really work out very well for me, probably more in a tactical sense going into that Usman fight first time around. And that's why he, in his post-fight speech, he's like, look at me now. I told you we could do it. You're doubting me. We can win a belt from the UK.
Yeah.
And even the way that they construct the gym down there, but that is very open in terms of open mat. But that's a bit of a tangent. But, Bisping wasn't alone. There were others that were helping him. You always need a little bit of a team around you. Dan Hardy was around at the same time. And there was, Ross Pearson was coming through. There were a few other fighters. But, Bisping with his character certainly did lead the way. He was bringing MMA to the masses because he would cross over, that those headlines would cross over and continue to do so. And that's the thing, Michael's work isn't done. And although he's hung up his gloves, when you people come into the UFC, come into MMA and start watching the UFC and they see a pundit like Bisping, like, oh, the guy's from, the north of England. Let me have a look at this guy. I don't really know what he's done. Oh, boy, he was the first champion. I should listen to him. Yeah. So I still think that his, everything, his additions to the sport right now are very, very important. And of course, he's got the track record to back it up.
Mm-hmm. Of course. John, look, 2 weeks away from a big card coming up in Brazil, UFC 283. And I wanted to get your thoughts quickly on the main event for that fight, which has been thrown together quite recently. Obviously, Jamahal Hill and Glover Teixeira, after the subsequent draw of Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev. Obviously, it's a very interesting fight that was thrown together, and I want to know how you sort of see that fight playing out, because I feel as maybe had the draw not have happened, maybe Jamahal mightn't have got his shot just yet, but nonetheless, it's a wonderful thing that he has gotten his shot, and timing, sometimes is a funny thing. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that fight coming up.
Yeah, I obviously didn't see it coming, and I think if you're Paul Craig sitting at home, you're probably thinking, you know what, maybe I should have taken a couple of different. Well, it's hard to. Things hadn't really gone Paul Craig's way of late, not just in terms of his performances, but some of the way that he was preparing for fights. So I feel sorry for guys like Paul Craig, who I feel like they're dark horses, never really the betting line favourite, but would put on incredible fights and look like he might get there. And after the way that his Jamahal Hill fight went, can't kind of remove that from my mind. And the reason why I bring that up, not just because of a bias to Paul Craig, but I think it shows the blueprint for Glover. And that's if he can weather the storm, which it's hard to say that he can't weather the storm.
Exactly.
When you've got Yuri Prohashka absolutely throwing everything behind, his body weight, he literally launches himself with all of his punches. So it's like a doubling up effect of power. Yeah. I was going back through that fight quite recently. Both of them, what they took into the damage. Now, there's an argument that wasn't that long ago, and you've taken that amount of damage and that on top of all the other stuff, but it doesn't seem to be wearing as on all of these warriors equally. And I think Glover's just one of those guys who's just so tough. But add to that the experience, the fearlessness, the desire to become champion again. It's hard not to have him as the favourite. Jamahal Hill is an explosive, he's going to rev up pretty quick. But I do think that the betting lines will favour. I haven't seen them. I would imagine they're favouring, the former champ to put it together, and maybe, rounds 3 don't. We get into round 3, I think the odds turn quite sharply in favour of Glover. But, as you say, I'm happy to see fresh blood get their opportunities. It's like life-changing stuff, right?
Definitely.
So, and if he wins, oh my word, that blows this whole thing open, doesn't it? It really does. Opens up much more new matchmaking, and for the analysts to start looking at how these people fight against one another is pretty interesting stuff.
And I think that's a good point that you raise, is that especially at light heavyweight, for so long it was John Jones, Daniel Cormier, Alexander Gustafsson. And now we're sort of starting to see this sort of resurgence of light heavyweight with regards to contenders and potential champions. But John, leading into my next question, I saw on your Instagram the other day, you got some work in with Eric Paulson. And look, while I'm sure you've been asked, what impact working and covering the sport has had on your life, I wanted to ask you, as a martial artist, can you speak to how being a practitioner of martial arts has helped you or impacted you throughout your life?
It's, I think, largely molded my life. I got involved in judo when I was 7. After judo, it was karate. After karate, it was boxing. And then none of my friends really were involved in combat sports or martial arts. So to reconnect with everyone, I went back to playing football and did so at, a fairly decent level. I wasn't getting paid, but, very competitive and doing it a lot. But even then on the football pitch, because I wasn't it's quite political, especially in the UK. It's the number one sport. And if you weren't part of like the county team or, the youth setup in a wider level, which I wasn't, despite whether I was good, bad or indifferent, you're always trying to break through a little clique. So the individual nature of martial arts, and then you get into scuffles on the pitches. I was a bit of a blood and guts type player, so I'd end up getting into those mixes quite regularly. You wouldn't believe it, right? But yeah, I used to have long hair as well. Yeah, and because you would believe this, I was quite mouthy, so I'd be up in the air within 5 minutes of that whistle being blown, and that used to make for some pretty interesting altercations on the field. And then you'd rely on your confidence from how to handle yourself from martial arts. But, when you're boxing in a local area, people know about it. So that would stop people from this, like getting involved. And I used to go out a lot as a teenager and a young man. It's funny. I got a recent poster of an old bar that we used to go to, and I've had a lot of interaction with people about that. It was a very social time in which I grew up. But of course, young men, you'd get into it. But when you had a little tiny, teeny reputation, people would think twice. But then you'd get the other side of things that want to test against you. So, it really did dictate a lot of the interactions that would go on within my group and wider. And then becoming more on the sports side of things, I found MMA later in life, late 20s. And I just saw a sport that was very underappreciated, poorly represented. And that's how this side of things really took over, because I wasn't training to be a broadcaster. I did try in my early 20s, not for sport, I might add. And it didn't work out, so I kind of parked it. So it was a true passion project to start banging the drum about MMA and martial arts and what good it can do and how great these athletes were. So when you try and embody that, and I still live to it now, like my preparation for a gig, it's probably like a fight camp. Yeah. I clean up my diet even more. I take out a lot. I don't go out as much. I don't train as much, which isn't a positive thing, actually. And I dial everything down to then try and produce this piece of work at the end of it. And I do identify with martial artists more than I do with other presenters, if you like. So, and I don't want that to change. I'm on my journey to pick up more black belt. Well, a black belt. I haven't got any yet, but that's kind of I take a martial artist approach to a lot of the things that I do.
Yeah, 100%. John, speaking on your next gig, I wanted to sort of touch on, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up, which is UFC 286 in London, and obviously the main event that's obviously been targeted is Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman number 3, which I'm very excited for if that can be made. How much are you looking forward to that event? And I think I know the answer to. I'm going to ask it. Will you be on the broadcast for that pay-per-view event?
Well, they kind of, they go together. So how much am I looking forward to it? I'm so stoked that we're getting a pay-per-view in London. I really am. And I'm really pleased for Leon. I've spent a lot of time with Leon. Leon is one of the fighters that I've spent the most amount of time with over the years, because I do a lot of the producing work for the UFC, which means I get sent into gyms. So like Team Calvin, I visited Leon a lot, and All Stars in Sweden. Jack Kamanson is probably a close third, fourth to that. So I've seen that, and Leon in particular, I've really seen the ups and the downs. Like I've been to see Leon on multiple occasions, and that footage is never aired because the fights have fallen out, and he was just so steadfast in God's plan. I remember him used to say that it's God's plan. It's this is what's supposed to happen, and I just need to keep my head down. I'm not going to change. I'm not going to be someone else to try and make this happen. I'm going to be Leon Edwards. I'm going to continue to try and inspire these people around me, show them a path, and I'll get there. And he did.
Mm.
So it's a beautiful story. You guys have now, everyone's now read it and heard it. So, but seeing it up close, very emotional. I was really emotional, and I was going back through. I've got it on Fight Pass, my wrap up for my best moments of 2022, and going back through the fights, the cornering, and then his post-fight speech was just so moving for everyone, I think. But I just wanted to underline that. So moving into this opportunity in London is huge for him, to carry a card. He was supposed to do that against Tyron Woodley, and that got taken away from him. So he now gets to do it. On a personal level, I won't have any part in the broadcast. So, I understand the politics, like I said, with football back in the day. Yeah. You play your part, you play your role, and sometimes it's difficult to break through, and I'm not part of the pay-per-view team. So I am upset that I would say there's probably no one who's holds a UFC microphone that knows the European region like I do.
Exactly.
I'm in the gyms with these guys, So I always feel like I can bring something. Of course, I want to. I'm like the substitute in this situation. Of course, I'm staying warm on the sidelines. Of course, I'm looking over at the manager, going, "Look, put me in. I can help something here." But right now, the game is going really well. There's no need to bring on a substitute. So I think I've accepted my role. I will continue to try and do the very best I can for the sport and the UFC products. I will be there, of course, doing stuff, and I look forward to a monumental occasion for UK MMA. And let's see what happens. The UFC have changed things around last minute before. If I can, even if I'm reporting in some capacity, I feel like I'll be able to add a local voice, which might not be so important. It might not seem so important, but I really feel like if we've got such a big event coming to town, it would go some ways in the local market if there were like local voices. I would imagine Michael Bisping will be on the broadcast, but it's going to be dominated by American accents, and I just feel like it would be really nice if there were more local voices to show people that this is happening here as well, and we have a footprint too.
Yeah,
for sure. So, John, something I wanted to ask you is, oftentimes, a fighter, especially in the UFC, they sort of need that breakout win to really solidify themselves in the eyes of the fans as a legitimate killer in the division. And, as such, high-level fighters can often go unnoticed for quite a while. To use a recent example, I myself was very high on Ilia Topuria and his skill set, even before his fight against Ryan Hall. And when that fight got announced, I thought it was a horrible matchup for Ryan Hall. I didn't think it was a good matchup. But, whereas now Ilia Topuria has obviously got the Bryce Mitchell victory, that really seemed to get the fans to pay attention to him. Heading into 2023, is there a particular fighter that you feel hasn't had that breakout fight yet, but has an incredibly dangerous or versatile skill set that is getting overlooked?
Oh, it's really difficult. That's one that I need to. These are the sorts of questions I feel like I need to prepare. A couple of people do come to mind, and I'm so going to overlook a bunch of others. Look, I would have said Topuria. I've seen him for a while, and I knew that he was an absolute killer. I would have said the same about Pavlovich before we just saw his recent performance. I'm going to say Guram Kutateladze. The guy got a split decision win over Gamrot. I saw Guram many, many years ago. I'll tell you when I saw him. I was going over to Malmo in Sweden to film Lena Landsberg before she took on Chris Cyborg.
Wow.
And he was in the gym then, and he was his coach made me watch him on the bag and performing some of his tricks because his kicks were phenomenal. And lo and behold, later in life, he's still doing a bit in Malmo, but then he moves over to the All Stars and he's one of Hamzat's main training partners. And we've seen the work that he did there against Gamrot, and he's just had loads of bad luck. Another run of bad luck recently, I think, was staph infection. We saw the other day. He put some pictures of his elbow out.
Yep.
He's someone to look out for. And then there's just I tell you another guy, Mike Davis.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If anyone hasn't watched that fight with which fight was it? Oh God.
I'm trying to remember now.
The Welshman. Oh God. Mason Jones.
Yes.
Go and watch that fight with Mason Jones. It is one of the best prelim fights you will ever witness. It was utterly spectacular. And Mike Davis is overlooked a little bit. He's had some inconsistencies. And he is a specimen of a human being, but boxing, wrestling, groundwork, got it covered. And he's a pretty interesting guy to follow as well on the socials. So there's just a few. I think those that have a slightly quieter personality, if you don't double down on a victory in terms of follow it up with good social content and everything else that comes with it, it kind of pains me to say it because I'm not really an extrovert either, but it is the nature of the beast. If you can parlay a good performance with some Anato Moicano post-fight stuff, like the way that he's suddenly, he's been around a long time. All of a sudden, Colby Covington was the same. Been doing work for ages. Then he created a character slightly different, like example and take. But if you manage to grab a hold of that and then you can hold on to the reins, then you're just going to skyrocket.
Yeah, 100%. John, look, couple last ones from us, man. Obviously, a very exciting year of fights to look forward to, and every year, you think you're going to get. It always beats the previous year, and I think this year is not exactly the same. So obviously, there's some very exciting fights to look forward to. I think obviously we touched on Leon and Kamaru, and I think Islam and Volkanovski here in Australia is one of the most interesting matchups. And obviously Jones and Ngannou, if they can get made. What fight of 2023, made or not made yet, are you most looking forward to if it comes to fruition?
Well, the one you've obviously knocked off a couple there. That Volkanovski Makhachev fight, I think it's such an important fight. If Volkanovski can do it, oh my God! Yeah. And by the way, I don't think it's out. Like I'm high on Volkanovski. I just don't see anyone. He's the closest guy to Makhachev for the featherweight division. Do you know what I mean? Be able to control a fight and use groundwork so effectively. No, he doesn't really get threatened when you look at most of the other guys. So, has he ever had an eye on needing that kind of skill set to overcome something like that? I don't know. But Eugene Behrman and the whole team, Lopez, like the whole team over there, they got it down. So we'll see how it plays out. I'll be there as well, by the way.
Awesome. Fantastic.
I'm so excited about being there.
Awesome.
McGregor keeps teasing a comeback this year. And, what he's done in the sport, you can I know that there's a lot of other stuff around it. When you distill it down to what he's actually done in the sport, you've got to be excited about his turnout as a professional. I've got a conversation coming out with John Kavanagh this week.
I saw that, yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Well, I gave it to the UFC over at the back end of last week, so I imagine they'll process it for Fight Pass this week. So I'll be releasing trailers, and it just reminded me. Good Lord, that period through Cage Warriors to the UFC, double champ status, and the amount of activity that he did have on his rise was unreal.
Unparalleled.
Creativity, like Jesus Christ. So,
2012 to 2016 with Conor was it was a special time, and I feel bad for people that weren't fans of the sport during that era.
Yeah. I said to John, I think at the very beginning of the conversation, feel so blessed to have been around, not only around that period as a fan, but pretty close to it, right? I was commentating those fights in Cage Warriors, commentated that fight with Diego Brandao as well, and obviously been like close to it and visiting him in camp for those big fights with like Eddie Alvarez and just like it was a very, very special time. Really good. Yeah. So if he can come back, whatever he does, whoever it's against, it's going to pop hard. Bo Nickel, I think that's going to be an interesting debut from my teammate Sam Patterson, who won his contract on the Contender Series, was on the same card.
Yep.
So I felt the energy around his, that win and him coming to the UFC and everything else. I like that. I keep banging on about Nunes Shevchenko 3.
Yeah, same.
Before it passes, I don't know if this is the year for it. I really don't know, but I'd still, take my money type deal for that kind of thing. So, yeah, we'll see how that all plays out. But otherwise, Arnold Allen looks like he might get a good run out, maybe against someone like Max Holloway. That, I'd love to see Arnold get an opportunity there, from Europe. Otherwise, I'm pretty open. I think Adesanya Pereira 3. That's a fight that I'd like to see again. That was just for Israel fans. That was brutal, man. That was so brutal. Again, let's have another look at it. And I think that Izzy's the kind of guy that bounces back from adversity better than 99% of humanity. So let's see what he can produce if they put that together, which I'm sure they will.
Agreed.
Yeah, for sure. So look, John, final question from us, man, because we really appreciate you giving us some time and it's been a pleasure to chat to you. But
thank you.
Your broadcasting career, it's obviously quite extensive and you've already achieved so much. And you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier with regards to spending time with family. But are there any other specific goals, either in or out of the world of MMA, that you really want to achieve for yourself this year?
This year, probably be more competitive on the grappling circuit. Going to get back to that. I won't say too much, I was offered an opportunity at the back end of last year, which was really, really cool. And for someone that never made the walk in professional MMA, I only got to taste it as an amateur for various reasons. It just didn't and will never happen now. So that's a bit of a shame. But there's still an opportunity for me as a grappler to step out in front of a few eyeballs with some interesting challenges. So I'd like to do that this year. Get back into triathlon work as well. I'm broadcasting within the triathlon world, but to actually get back out racing would be pretty good. But I'm also I'm an aspiring sort of entrepreneur. I've been involved in business before I was a broadcaster, and I think that it's important for me personally, I get not bored easily, but I get nervous actually that I don't have other things in place to kind of take care of my family. So I think this is a year after some shit financial years that have just gone past previously. If I can get myself in a better financial position, I would like to start maybe a property. I'd love to get another property. I have our family home, but it'd be good to get something to generate a little income. And I've been thinking about other businesses for a while now. They wouldn't have been the right time, but I know they're the right kind of businesses. So I think investments outside of the world of martial arts, although if an opportunity came to invest in an MMA gym or a martial arts academy to help out my coach and teammates, I would love to do that as well. But I sadly don't think I have the resources to be able to do that anytime soon. But I think we've all got to keep moving forward, or even moving sideways. Just movement in whatever you do is important. Don't ever stay stagnant. Keep an open mind. It's a good time of year to look at those sorts of things, and I have done. But at the same time, it can get pretty overwhelming. So I think just work hard, enjoy the process in whatever it is. Give things a go, but don't also bury yourself. If you're younger, definitely take more risks. If you're old like me, don't force your family onto the street for your own ego. So there's a careful balance there.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, John, again, thank you so much for giving us some time, man. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Wishing you all the best, man, for the rest of the year, and we'd love to talk to you again in future.
Yeah, let's do it. Thanks, guys. I'm sorry it took so long, and I appreciate you bearing with me.
Not at all, man.
Thank you very much, John.
All the best.
See ya.